Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, 2020, and today officially ends the bid for any of the candidates for the 2020 Democratic primary. And today, Joe Biden is essentially the declared nominee for president from the Democratic Party. This comes as Bernie Sanders officially announcing today that he will end his presidential bid and will no longer fight in this very long and contentious primary season. There's a number of primaries that have still yet to go on. I'm assuming that a number of them will be solidly in favor of Joe Biden, but pretty much Joe Biden is the only major Democrat still left running in this race. And this comes not as a surprise to many. I'm going to talk and walk you guys through the reasons why Bernie Sanders would have dropped out, his reasoning for it. He mentioned in his video that he is currently 300 delegates behind Joe Biden and that the pathway forward is virtually impossible. And my last video where I discussed the Democratic primary, we discussed why Joe Biden is pretty much all but surely going to be the Democratic nominee. And these are the numbers before Bernie Sanders dropped out. So first reasoning, I guess, obviously, is just the delegate math. Not exactly the best look for Senator Bernie Sanders. According to 538, he had a 0% chance at winning a majority of delegates. That means winning outright without the need of superdelegates. And then when you switched it over to a plurality, it's the same exact percentage. There is absolutely no chance for Bernie Sanders moving forward after a number of losses on that Super Tuesday day and then a couple gradual ones along the way. And taking a look at the 2016 Democratic primary, taking a look at the states that have still yet to vote, I mean, honestly, a lot of these green states that were green for Bernie Sanders ended up going to Vice President Biden. If you take a look and you just compare the map, we're talking about states such as Michigan or Idaho or Washington. These are solidly Bernie Sanders states that have flipped over to Vice President Biden. So obviously this map was not a good look for Bernie Sanders, leaving off Super Tuesday. Bernie Sanders went from being the presumed frontrunner and presumed nominee. I was even discussing him as the all but sure to be nominee. He had a 50-something% chance. Actually, we can look. At a time, Bernie was nearing 75% at a chance of winning a plurality of pledged delegates. And then in terms of a majority of pledged delegates, it wasn't the biggest, but there was a very large chance it was going to be a contested convention after South Carolina. And then once Super Tuesday hit, I mean, Joe Biden's numbers skyrocketed. And unfortunately for Bernie Sanders, right after, I guess, that was the official end of his campaign as we knew it. And just taking a look at a number of these states, it was just a repeat of the 2016 map with an increase of support for Joe Biden. If you look at Missouri, that was the closest state in the 2016 primary. I think that's a perfect example of where Bernie Sanders lost some of his support. If you just look at the state of Missouri itself, it was insanely close. It was 49.6% to 49.36%. If you take a look at the same exact state in 2020, it was 60% to 34.6%. So it went from being the closest state in the 2016 primary to not only, I guess, maybe increased turnout, actually looking at those numbers, but it looks like it is increased turnout, but still every single county went to Joe Biden, and it wasn't just there. I mean, if you take a look at Illinois, that was an insanely close state in 2016. I'm only using these as an example as to where Bernie Sanders' numbers faltered, which is the reason why all of these pundits say that Bernie Sanders was not going to win the race. 51% to 49%, 59% to 36%. So this is a two-way race. It definitely should have been seen as a lot closer. Joe Biden, in my opinion, is not as strong of a debater as Hillary Clinton, but he's just vastly more liked, and that's what made or broke the Bernie Sanders campaign down. Bernie Sanders ran against one of the most unpopular politicians in America. Though being the most admired woman for a decade, she was also extremely unpopular amongst Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike. And for Joe Biden, that wasn't the case. He's popular amongst Democrats, he's popular amongst independents, and he's also mildly popular amongst Republicans, as popular as a Democrat could be. Now, the same can be said for Bernie Sanders. I'm not acknowledging that. But when you take a look at these Democratic primary voters, keep in mind minority voters pretty much paved the way for whoever will be the Democratic nominee, and this time they chose Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders did have some good strides, though. He won the state of California. He held on to states such as New Hampshire, practically won Iowa based off the popular vote, and Nevada, so he won a lot of the early states. The last-minute endorsement in South Carolina swayed a number of the voters there in favor of Joe Biden. And once that hit, the race narrowed down to two people. Pete Buttigieg was still remaining in the race, but he dropped out. Amy Klobuchar dropped out. And then the day after Super Tuesday, Michael Bloomberg dropped out, and so did Elizabeth Warren. Now, moving forward for the progressive movement, they definitely have a place in the 2024 election. That is the first year AOC can run. I'm sure that she will actually put her bid in whether or not she wins. She has 40 years after that to win based off the ages of these nominees. And, you know, the Progressive Party is by no means finished. This Democratic primary was not a silencing blow to the progressive movement. It was more of a push for a candidate that they believed could beat Donald Trump. And I know a lot of you guys that did support Bernie Sanders do not necessarily agree with the, numbers that say Joe Biden would win, but I genuinely believe that Joe Biden is the more electable Democrat as of right now. Now, whether that's an issue anymore, it's not, because Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee unless, something happens or this primary season takes a flip. But honestly, when you have no one else in the race, no one else really can win, right? But Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign. It's not the exact same as just completely dropping the race. I'm sure that he will still persuade some people to push for his policies at the DNC. Obviously, that's just what you do as a former candidate. Bernie Sanders, he also, I don't believe, endorsed Joe Biden yet. I know he urged people, but I don't know if he fully endorsed. He wasn't on the primary endorsement list for Joe Biden, surprisingly. But, Donald Trump tweeted out today saying that this was Elizabeth Warren's fault, that Bernie Sanders would have won every single Super Tuesday state if it wasn't for Warren. That's all in the past. I generally do not think that it's beneficial for any of you guys to be, fighting in my comment section about things like that. If you're, supporting any of these candidates, honestly, just move forward with that. But there's no point in rehashing on the past. It's generally not going to bring any good from it, and it's just going to cause a lot of, turmoil. I've seen it a lot on various social media forums. So I know this is probably a really saddening day for a number of you guys. For a lot of you guys that did support Bernie Sanders, but I guess that's just how the Democratic primary turned out. But there is no official nominee yet. No one has the needed 1,991 delegates. Finally got that number down. But, as we move on, the states that were still to come, there's a reason why, Bernie knew that he had to exit the race now, because he said he would stay until New York. And New York was supposed to happen on April 28th. So if coronavirus had never been a thing, that's the last stand for Bernie Sanders. But it doesn't look like he's going to do too well in any of these other states that are coming up. Honestly, just comparing the 2016 primary map by first vote, it just doesn't end up looking good. New York was a Clinton state, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Ohio, not Indiana, Kentucky, Georgia, Wisconsin wasn't, but it looks like a lot of the data there is going to end up being in favor of Biden. And then just a couple of other filler states out here in the Midwest. But then, once Oregon and Alaska and Hawaii hit for Sanders, even if they did go for Bernie Sanders, there wasn't that many delegates left for him to make a recovery. And Bernie Sanders needed, I believe, 63 or 67, one of those two numbers, percent of the remaining delegates in order to win the nomination outright, whereas Joe Biden only needed 45%. So theoretically, Joe Biden could have lost every single race moving on and still won the primary. And yeah, it may seem like there's a number of states that have still yet to vote, but based off these numbers alone, this is Joe Biden has a larger lead over Bernie Sanders than Barack Obama had over Hillary Clinton at any point in the primary season. And same thing in 2016 if you take out superdelegates. So honestly, it was never going to go to a contesting convention if this continued, if Bernie Sanders had stayed in the race. So it made more sense for him to drop out now, work with Joe Biden on pushing his policies to the general election platform, than staying in the race and seeming a little bit like a spoiler, considering that this Democratic primary race was probably going to continue on through June, because that's when a lot of the primaries had been postponed to. The Democratic National Convention has been postponed to August. There was a lot of things that would have kept this race dragging if Bernie Sanders had not dropped out today. Now, I get it. There's down ballot races, but I can guarantee it turnout won't be as high by any means in any of those races. And a lot of states are looking at a mail-in ballot only, possibly no voting on June 2nd. Just still get your absentee ballots in by June 2nd or a mail date by June 2nd. But you can see there are a number of delegates that still needed to be allocated on June 2nd. But at the end of the day, they will not really make a difference at this point. We could probably see just a solid blue column here for Joe Biden, and we likely would have seen that still if Bernie Sanders had remained in the race, just based off the trajectory of the race. If you take a look at the, polling data, I just want to show you guys, if you were wondering about that. The polling data now, based off Real Clear Politics, shows Joe Biden with 57.5% of the vote. I don't know if they've zeroed out Bernie Sanders yet. No, they haven't, but this is before Bernie Sanders dropped out. The recent polls, Biden plus 16, plus 26, plus 22, plus 32, plus 25, plus 30. Hillary Clinton never had that type of lead over Bernie Sanders in 2016 after Iowa hit. And the fact that it's happening now for Joe Biden before Bernie Sanders dropped out definitely is definitely one of the main factors why Bernie Sanders realized that moving forward in the Democratic race may not be the best use of his time. And it definitely should be, for his case, if he wants to get things done on the in the general election, to focus on working with Joe Biden and getting things done for the general election. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I might make a video later. I'm definitely going to upload a couple more throughout this week. I don't know if I'll be doing them every day, but I'll definitely try. Again, I'm also sick. I don't know if you could tell, but I could tell. But again, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all tomorrow.